I was watching this video and it gave me this whole new perspective on avoidant people. And I just want to explain this to you guys because it's just thinking about it this way just is so profound. So this person was talking about this in terms of like addicts and addiction, but this totally plays into avoidance. So he was saying that all bad behavior stems from essentially wanting love and validation, but not having the skill set to be able to get those needs met correctly. So if you think about an avoidant person, this avoidant person has been in a state of like fight or flight threat for their entire life. Like that is just how their nervous system exists. And the same thing is true if you're anxious. I think the same thing is true for all insecure attachments, but we're just focusing on the avoidant. So for their whole life, their whole childhood, they have lived in this state of fight or flight threat. And those fears that they have underneath, that shit is very real, okay? It's very real. When they get activated into a trigger, they're not just doing that for fun. That's a real threat that is threatening something in their nervous system, and they need to do something about that to make that threat dissipate because it feels very uncomfortable and they've never been taught any healthy coping mechanisms to deal with it. In fact, all they've ever been taught is that they need to suppress it and not deal with it and find other ways to survive, like hyper-independence and not feeling their feelings and avoiding, right? All these things that they do because feelings are not safe. Asserting your needs is not safe. These things will lead to future pain. So you need to suppress, suppress, suppress. So here's what happens when the avoidant gets into a relationship. So people ask all the time, why do avoidants even bother getting into relationships if they're just going to get scared and run away? Well, first of all, they don't realize that they're avoidant, okay? They don't know that. They are human. They crave love and connection just like anyone else. They are a human, individual person before they are an avoidant. They want love and connection. All human beings do, okay? They don't know that they're avoidant. This is shit that takes a long time to learn. You know, you have to do a lot of research on that stuff before you realize that that's an issue. So they're not going about their life knowing that. How could they? It's all they've ever known. So they get into a relationship because they desperately want that love and validation and connection. Well, what happens is at that first sign of something that triggers them and sends them into that threatened state, what they have taught themselves to do for survival is to suppress that, to avoid that, to not feel that, right? But a person can't just not feel something. You have to have a way to cope. You have to have a way to self-soothe so that you can avoid that trigger, right? So what are some ways that avoidance will self-soothe? Well, they will pull away. That is a way of self-soothing. That is a way of coping with this current threat. They'll pull away, gain some space. They will engage in addictions. So maybe drinking, drugs, gambling, shopping, sports betting, whatever it might be. They might be workaholics. A lot of avoidants are workaholics. They might have a ton of hobbies and they will literally like stay up all night doing their hobby because they have to use these things to self-soothe because they just had this trigger that threatened their nervous system into a serious state of activation. Now they have to do something about that so that they can suppress this feeling because feelings do not feel safe for them. So what happens as the relationship continues is this is where things start to get really complicated because the exact ways that the avoidant self-soothes are the exact things that trigger the anxious person. When the avoidant has to pull away to deal with their triggers, when the avoidant has to, book side jobs on the weekends and take time away from their partner, or when they prioritize their hobbies or doing other things, right? That triggers the anxious person. So now the anxious person has become triggered and they're coming to the avoidant saying, how come you prioritize everything else over me? How come you're not consistent? Blah, blah, blah. okay, there's another threat to the avoidance nervous system, okay? So now there's another added layer of threat, which is only going to cause the avoidant to start doing those things more because that's the only way they know how to deal with those triggers. It's like this sick fucking cycle. And then the avoidant goes and does those things more, which causes the anxious person to get even more triggered, okay? So then it just becomes this back and forth of triggers, all right? And what happens with the avoidant is the things that were working before to self-soothe stop working as well. Okay, so they're going to start needing to pull even more away, or they're going to start, maybe I need to get on a dating app now, or maybe I need to reach out to one of my exes, or maybe I need to, whatever it might be, right? Up the ante. And they're not doing that because they want to hurt you. They're doing that because the other coping mechanisms aren't working anymore. And they are feeling so much threat and activation that they need anything to help self-soothe because they're going crazy, because a person can only suppress for so long. You're not supposed to suppress your feelings and emotions like that. It's not healthy and it's not normal. That's why they start engaging in all this other shit, right? The way that an anxious person self-soothes is by trying to control the relationship. So that the anxious person is using the avoidant as their addiction, as their coping mechanism, which is just terrible for the avoidant, because all the avoidant wants is to get away from the anxious person for a little while so that they can deal with that feeling that they're having. So it just turns into this really bad mess. What happens on the day that the avoidant abruptly discards the anxious person is that the avoidant has been suppressing for so long. They have been suppressing any logical reasoning, right? Like a logical person, instead of suppressing, they would talk about how they're feeling. They would bring those things to the table. They would be able to communicate. They would be able to be vulnerable. That would all be logical. Well, the avoidant can't do those logical things. So they have been suppressing anything logical, right? And they erupt into an illogical response. Immediately the most illogical response. I'm panicking, I need to just end this relationship. Because they look at their partner as the main thing that's triggering them. Like, you're the one that wants all this intimacy. You're the one that's requiring so much from me. So this is the thing I need to break off if I'm going to be okay. Because I'm over here really struggling. I'm trying to suppress all this shit so I can pretend to be happy in this relationship. And it's not working anymore. It's not fucking working anymore. When I look at my relationship, it is so clear to see the way this happened. Like textbook. Like all the things that he was doing before he left me, I can see it all in a straight line now. Where he started suppressing, how his coping mechanisms started to get more and more and more. And then that starts to build shame for the avoidant, because then when they start lying to you and doing things behind your back because they are trying to feel better, they're trying to ease their level of threat. But at the same time, some of those coping mechanisms are cheating. Some of those coping mechanisms are lying. Some of those things are things that are hurting their partner, which then adds on a layer of shame, which then makes everything worse, which then causes them to erupt.